There is a lie that's been planted in the minds of too many people. The lie that worth must be earned through achievement, status, approval, or attention. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that we are only as valuable as our grades, our looks, our wealth, or our ability to impress others. But the truth is this: your value is not something you earn. It is something you carry. It lives in your very existence. The world may try to measure you in numbers, titles, and validation from others, but none of those things determine who you are. You are not a product. You are not a trophy. You are not a reflection of society's ever-changing standards. You are already whole, already enough, and already worthy simply because you exist. Make people misunderstand their own value. They begin to chase things outside themselves in the hope of finally feeling enough. They work tirelessly to become someone they think others will admire, only to find that admiration is a moving target. They overextend themselves, compromise their peace, and silence their authenticity, all for a taste of approval that never truly satisfies. They build their identity on unstable foundations: how many people like them, how much they've accomplished, how loud the applause is. But what happens when the applause fades? What happens when the success stalls or the crowd moves on? If your value was placed in those things, you'll be left empty. That's why your worth must come from within. It must be rooted in the truth that you are valuable even when no one is watching, even when no one is clapping. No, people who know their value walk differently. They move with purpose, not desperation. They don't need to broadcast their greatness because it radiates naturally through how they carry themselves. They don't compromise their standards for the sake of fitting in because they know they were never meant to shrink to someone else's level. They don't tolerate disrespect, not because they're arrogant, but because they understand that their presence is not to be discounted. When you truly recognize your worth, you stop allowing others to treat you like you're disposable. You stop explaining your worth. You stop begging for what you already deserve. You begin to live with an unshakable confidence, not arrogance, but certainty. Those who try to diminish your value often do so because they feel threatened by it. Insecure people will attempt to make you doubt your worth so they can feel more comfortable in your presence. But no one can diminish something they didn't create. Your value does not decrease because someone fails to recognize it. It does not disappear because someone refuses to honor it. And it certainly doesn't need to be proved to anyone. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you walk like you matter, speak like you matter, and dream like you matter. You were born with purpose running through your veins, and it's time you stop apologizing for it. The danger of not knowing your value is that you begin to accept far less than you deserve. You tolerate relationships that drain you, environments that belittle you, and situations that make you question your power. You start living small, thinking small, and dreaming small because you've forgotten how powerful you truly are. But deep inside, something always knows. That fire never fully goes out. That voice, no matter how faint, still whispers the truth. You were made for more. Not because you need to prove something, but because your existence carries weight. Your presence is not accidental. You are here with intention, and that alone is enough to stand tall. When you anchor your identity in your true value, your world begins to change. You no longer wait for someone else to validate your existence. You validate yourself through how you show up, how you speak life into your path, and how you refuse to settle for anything that dishonors your essence. You stop performing for people who don't even see you. You stop negotiating with people who don't even know how to value themselves. And most importantly, you begin to walk with a sense of power that no one can give you and no one can take away. You don't just know your value, you live it. You breathe it. You embody it. And when you do, you become a force the world cannot ignore. ChatGPT said, validation is a drug that too many people are addicted to without even realizing it. The desire to be accepted, praised, or recognized by others becomes so consuming that it dictates every decision, every action, every word spoken. People alter who they are just to be liked, just to be noticed, just to be acknowledged by a world that never stays loyal. They become performers in their own lives, constantly checking if they're good enough in the eyes of others, constantly measuring their worth by the applause they receive. But the truth is, the moment you seek validation from the outside, you hand over your power. You hand over your identity. You allow someone else to determine your value, and in doing so, you abandon your own voice. It's a dangerous game to live for approval, because approval is conditional. One moment you're praised and the next you're criticized. One day you're loved and the next you're forgotten. The crowd will cheer for you today and turn on you tomorrow. If you base your identity on their applause, then your confidence will rise and fall with their moods. You become enslaved to opinion, trapped by the fear of disapproval, paralyzed by the thought of rejection. But true power comes when you detach your worth from people's opinions, when you understand that your soul cannot be weighed by someone else's insecurities or preferences. That kind of power is unshakable because it doesn't beg, it builds. People often give up their authenticity for acceptance. They silence their truth to avoid conflict. They water down their ideas so they won't be judged. They hide their passion, their faith, their vision because they don't want to be misunderstood or rejected. And in doing so, they betray themselves. They become strangers to their own reflection. But there is no fulfillment in being what others want you to be. There is no peace in living a life that pleases everyone, but starves your own soul. The truth is, no matter how much you bend, shrink, or mold yourself to fit someone else's approval, there will always be those who criticize. So you might as well be criticized for being real. Seeking validation is rooted in fear, the fear of being alone, of being disliked, of not being enough. But growth never happens in the comfort of people's approval. It happens when you learn to stand alone, when you learn to trust your inner voice more than the noise of the crowd, when you stop waiting for others to clap for you and start clapping for yourself. That's when you step into freedom, because you're no longer chasing acceptance. You're living with self-respect. You're no longer bending for approval. You're standing in truth. That shift changes everything. That's when your energy shifts. That's when people start to notice your confidence without you needing to prove a thing. Validation doesn't build real confidence. It builds dependence. The more you rely on compliments, likes, or applause, the more your identity weakens. Because it's not anchored within, it's borrowed. And what is borrowed can always be taken away. Real confidence comes from living aligned with your values, your purpose, your beliefs. It comes from doing what's right, even when it's unpopular. It comes from being consistent with your truth, even when it's inconvenient. When you stop needing to be liked, that's when you become unstoppable. Because nothing owns you. Nothing controls you. You move from truth, not fear. You walk in clarity, not confusion. Freedom begins the moment you stop asking the world for permission to be who you are. The moment you decide that your truth matters more than their opinion. The moment you start choosing authenticity over approval. And when you get to that place, you don't need the crowd to validate you. You don't need their applause to feel worthy. You don't need their agreement to know you're on the right path. You validate yourself through your actions, through your courage, through your integrity. You look in the mirror and know exactly who you are. And that knowing, that internal certainty is louder than any approval you'll ever receive. Most people don't realize how much of their life has been shaped by someone else's fear. They absorb doubts, inherit limitations, and carry mindsets that were never theirs to begin with. From childhood, from teachers, from peers, even from family, they're told what's possible and what's not, what's acceptable and what's too ambitious. And slowly, without even noticing, they start living according to a map that someone else drew. A map built on hesitation, insecurity, and fear of failure. But just because someone else couldn't break through doesn't mean you won't. Their inability is not your destiny. Their fear is not your foundation. People will always try to place their ceilings over your life. They'll tell you to play it safe, to be realistic, to lower your expectations, not because they want to harm you, but because they've never seen what greatness looks like up close. They speak from their experience, from their pain, from their setbacks, but their vision is limited. Their perspective is confined. You cannot let someone else's small thinking become the walls of your own reality. The moment you allow someone else's limitations to define your potential, you bury your own gift. You shrink your purpose. You silence the part of you that was built to rise. The danger lies in internalizing their doubt. When you start repeating the words they spoke in your own mind, when you start treating their opinions like facts, that's when the damage begins. You start second-guessing your dreams, hesitating to take risks, staying in places that are too small for your spirit. You convince yourself you're not capable, not ready, not qualified, not because it's true, but because someone else made you believe it. The most dangerous prison is the one you build with other people's bricks. When you begin to see through their fear, you reclaim your freedom. You realize that just because it was impossible for them doesn't mean it's impossible for you. Their judgment is not a reflection of your ability. It's a mirror of their own fear. And fear has a loud voice. It'll scream when it feels threatened by your courage. It'll criticize when it sees you step into something greater. Not everyone will understand your vision. And that's perfectly fine. It's not theirs to carry. You weren't meant to convince them. You weren't meant to wait for their blessing. You were meant to walk with conviction, whether they clap or not. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you believe in yourself. You don't need their permission to chase what sets your soul on fire. True strength comes when you draw the line, when you say that may have been your story, but it's not going to be mine. When you stop playing small to make others comfortable. When you break away from inherited fear and dare to write a new narrative. That's when your life begins to change. Because the moment you stop absorbing their doubt, you create space for your own belief to grow. And belief, real belief, has the power to transform everything. It shifts your mindset, your energy, your choices. It lifts your vision from what is to what could be. You were not born to repeat someone else's story. You were born to create your own, to lead, not follow. To expand, not shrink, to push boundaries, not stay confined within them. The voices that try to limit you will always be loud, but your purpose must be louder. And when you start trusting your own voice more than theirs, when you stop asking for directions from people who've never been where you're going, that's when everything opens. That's when momentum builds. That's when the impossible starts to look like a challenge instead of a wall. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are doors you choose to close to protect the energy, time, and peace you've built through your growth. They are not signs of selfishness, but symbols of self-respect. People who do not understand your value will always try to test the limits of your presence. They'll demand more than you can give, drain more than you can afford, and still make you feel guilty for standing your ground. That's why boundaries are not optional, they are essential. You teach the world how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you don't draw the line, someone else will draw it for you, and you won't like where they place it. The truth is, people will always take what you allow. If you constantly say yes when your soul is screaming no, you slowly erode your own worth. Every time you silence your needs, every time you compromise your standards, you send a message to yourself and others. My boundaries don't matter. And over time, this becomes your reality. You find yourself overworked, undervalued, and emotionally exhausted. Not because you lack power, but because you handed it away. Piece by piece. The power to choose, to walk away, to say this doesn't serve me is the very power that reinforces your worth. And no one will protect your peace for you. It's your job to guard it fiercely. The most dangerous thing you can do is allow disrespect in the name of love, loyalty, or peace. Too many people remain silent because they fear losing relationships, opportunities, or approval. But if someone's presence in your life requires you to abandon your standards, it's not a connection, it's control. Real respect doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't require you to bend until you break. It honors your boundaries without punishment, without manipulation, without guilt. And when you start enforcing those boundaries, the people who benefited from your lack of them will call you selfish. Let them. Their discomfort is not your burden. You don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't owe anyone a justification for protecting your mental health, your energy, or your emotional well-being. The moment you feel the need to over-explain is the moment you step back into the mindset of seeking approval. Boundaries don't require permission. They require clarity and consistency. Speak them clearly, enforce them firmly, and walk away when they are violated. Your peace is too expensive to let anyone cheapen it with excuses or emotional games. You have every right to walk away from anything that no longer honors who you are becoming. Setting boundaries is not just about others. It's also about yourself. It's about creating a standard for how you treat yourself, how you rest, how you say no, how you prioritize what truly matters. It's about refusing to betray yourself to please people who would never do the same for you. You can be kind and still be firm. You can be generous and still say no. You can love people deeply and still choose yourself when necessary. That is not weakness. That is power rooted in self-awareness. And once you realize how much freedom comes from honoring your boundaries, you'll never go back to living without them. The more you honor your boundaries, the more you attract people who do the same. The world will start to reflect the standard you've set. You'll notice the shift. Fewer arguments, less drama, more peace, more clarity, because the people who truly value you will never be threatened by your standards. They'll respect them. They won't make you beg for rest, for space, for respect. They'll meet you at the level you meet yourself. And in that space, you don't just survive, you thrive. You grow, you evolve, you elevate. You stop proving your worth and start protecting it. You don't become great the moment someone tells you that you are. You become great the moment you start acting like it. The moment your thoughts, your habits, your decisions begin to reflect the truth that you are powerful beyond belief. Most people carry greatness, but live in hesitation. They talk about what they could be, what they might do, what they one day will become, but their actions betray that belief because deep down, they're waiting for permission, waiting for the fear to disappear, waiting for the perfect timing, as if life will one day hand them a neatly packaged moment labeled, "Now you're ready." But the people who rise are not the ones who wait. They're the ones who move even when the voice in their head says, "You're not enough." Greatness isn't about being loud. It's about being consistent. It's in how you show up when no one's watching. It's in the choices you make when comfort tempts you to quit. It's in the way you discipline your thoughts when negativity knocks at the door. Living like you believe in your greatness means you no longer let excuses speak louder than your purpose. You wake up with intention. You show up with focus. You train your mind to see possibility where others see limits. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. When you believe in your greatness, you stop chasing things that dishonor your vision. You stop attaching yourself to things that keep you small. You don't have time to entertain doubt when you're building something bigger than fear. You can't claim greatness and then live in contradiction. You can't speak power, but make decisions rooted in insecurity. You can't talk discipline and live in chaos. Greatness demands integrity. It demands that your habits reflect your goals, that your character backs up your words, that your environment matches your mindset. When you live like you believe in your greatness, you start making uncomfortable choices. You walk away from what's familiar. You distance yourself from people who feed your weaknesses. You stop explaining your vision to people who don't have the capacity to understand it because you know where you're going and you refuse to let anything pull you off course. There will always be moments that test you, moments that try to make you forget who you are. You'll fall. You'll get tired. You'll wonder if it's even worth it. But believing in your greatness doesn't mean you never doubt. It means you push through the doubt anyway. You get back up. You recalibrate. You recommit. Because when your belief runs deep, setbacks don't define you. They refine you. They sharpen your hunger, your fire, your resilience. You don't let temporary pain steal your permanent purpose. You don't allow small minds to shrink your vision. You walk like you carry something sacred because you do. Living like you believe in your greatness means that every part of your life becomes intentional. Your circle gets tighter. Your time gets guarded. Your standards rise. You no longer tolerate what once distracted you. You start holding yourself accountable to the highest version of who you are becoming. That voice in your head that once said, "I can't," is replaced by one that says, "Watch me." You stop waiting to feel ready. You start becoming ready through your action. You don't just think differently, you move differently. You take the steps. You embrace the struggle and you celebrate the process, not just the outcome, because you know that greatness is not an event, it's a lifestyle. When you live like you believe in your greatness, you stop negotiating with average. You stop lowering your standards to fit in with people who gave up on themselves. You stop trying to explain your fire to people who are comfortable living cold. You live with clarity, with urgency, with hunger, because there's a mission burning inside you, and you don't have the luxury to waste time pretending you're not ready. You are born ready. You were born equipped. Everything you need is already inside you. And when your belief turns into action, the world doesn't just notice, you become undeniable. So now you choose. Do you keep shrinking for the comfort of others, or do you rise for the greatness inside you? Do you keep chasing validation from people who don't even value themselves? Or do you validate your own existence through discipline, through courage, through results? You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to play small. You were built to disrupt every limit placed on your life. And the moment you start living like you believe you're made for more, That's the moment the world has no choice but to adjust to the power of your presence. You don't need to prove anything. Just become it. Walk like it, speak like it, breathe like it, because your value isn't waiting to be found. It's waiting to be owned.